Buenas, buenas, and off a day. We're back in emergency session, and we are currently on Bill 317, and we're on round 3 amendments. Colleagues, again, I ask that you submit your amendments to the drive, and we do have some amendments here. We'll go in order of receipt. And so, Senator San Nicolas, you have the floor on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for the amendments. Yes, thank you, sir. I would like to add a amendment, line 18, page 2, to amend the bill to read, notwithstanding any provision of law, the Department of Education, GDOE, is hereby authorized to operate schools that are awaiting inspection for school year 2024-2025. GDOE schools that have failed inspection may continue to operate at the discretion and approval of the superintendent of GDOE and the director of the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services. Thank you, sir.
Senator San Nicolas, again, round 3 for amendments, comments on the main motion right now on this amendment from Senator San Nicolas. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this amendment? Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this amendment? Senator San Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, during the discussion on the first and second round, the superintendent did stress his concern that he doesn't want to be alone in the approval, and they would like to have public health join him in giving the conditional or the approval to open up. And with that, the onus is now in 2 agencies to open schools, superintendent and public health. And I support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. On the amendment, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the amendment? Speaker Terlahi, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair. I too was interested in this amendment until the Department of Education pretty much said, no, that's not going to help their situation, and they would not operate a school that had failed inspection until it had passed inspection. So they said pretty much that adding public health would not help them, and then they said separately that they would never subscribe to this. And I'm pretty sure public health, because I asked them, said the same thing, that public health would not agree ever to opening a school or operating a school that had failed inspection. So with all due respect, I just think that's the reason why I wouldn't support this amendment, and I think they've made it very clear. This was in the bill last year, the law that was passed, and they never used it. So they never agreed to do this, to open a school that had failed inspection.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On the amendment, the San Nicolas amendment, is there anyone who wishes to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yes, it was the superintendent testified that although we gave him the authority, he never used it because he didn't want to be held liable if a school failed and anything happened because of that. So yeah, again, initially I was thinking, maybe support this, but it doesn't seem like they are going to utilize this authority, and it doesn't erase the liability.
Senator Perez. On the amendment, the San Nicolas amendment, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the amendment? If not, the sponsor may close. Senator San Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment is important because the inspection of schools is very stringent. I get a lot of messages from principals saying that the inspection sometimes can not truly telling. I mean, it's safe enough to operate, but it may fail the inspection. So that's why this is very necessary, and I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
See, Dumas-Masi, Senator San Nicolas. On the amendment, is there any objection? Okay. That's it. Well, amendment passes. Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Si Dumas-Masi, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to you and my colleagues. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to proffer this amendment, and it's on page 2, line 24, to add a new section to the bill to read Section 3, Conditional Use. Mr. Chair, I'm proffering this amendment to consider another perhaps more accountable path forward as we consider another year extension of this temporary exemption we are providing to the Guam Department of Education for getting its school to pass the health inspection. So I'll go ahead and read the amendment, sir, if I may. It's Section 3, Conditional Use. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the Department of Public Health and Social Services, DPHSS, for school year 2024 to 2025 may allow a Guam Department of Education school, GDOE school, that has failed its Department of Public Health and Social Services inspection to operate conditionally pending correction of any environmental health violation under Title 10 of the Guam Code annotated Chapter 20 through 40, or any rules and regulations promulgated concerning sanitary permits. Such conditional use may only be granted after the GDOE submits to DPHSS a corrective action plan to address deficiencies and violations identified during a school's failed inspection. DPHSS shall set a prescribed timeline which shall not exceed 180 days, to which the deficiencies must be corrected in order to continue to operate. DPHSS may conduct on-site inspection of schools to ensure the submitted corrective action plan is being implemented. Lack of implementation of corrective action plan may be grounds for termination of conditional use permitted by this section. As we've seen, Mr. Chair, with this recently completed school year, despite the Guam Department of Education prioritizing these inspections, and despite the Department of Public Health prioritizing these inspections, and despite this legislature under your oversight, Mr. Chair, holding monthly hearings on these pending inspections, we are still left with 18 schools that haven't been inspected in a time frame prescribed by Public Law 37-32. My intention, Mr. Chair, with this proposal, and to my colleagues on this proposed amendment, is to prevent a repeat of what we are seeing now. And this is concerns from the public over how long will the government allow schools to operate without a valid sanitation permit, without the peace of mind for our parents and students and teachers and staff who deserve to go to a place that is up to code. So, Mr. Chair, in addition to this bill's year's extension to allow schools to operate while pending an inspection, and in addition to this bill's extension of the superintendent's approval to operate a school that has failed an inspection, comes this third option to allow a school that has failed a health inspection to open under the condition that violations will be corrected by a deadline prescribed by DPHSS. My intention here is to offer a compromise to our stakeholders. There will be an official report that details how and why each of these 18 schools earned health violations, and establish a time frame to address the broken tiles, the uncovered walkways, and the inadequate ventilation, and other mistakes noted by the environmental health inspectors. Mr. Chair and colleagues, I worked with the author of Bill 317 to come up with this 180-day maximum length for this conditional use, but I am open to discussions on the consensus. I'm open to the discussions, Mr. Chair, on what the consensus is among the members of this body, whether that means increasing or decreasing that 180-day window, and I welcome feedback from my colleagues, Mr. Chair. And then I know that with that amendment, it's with public health and DOE. So, Mr. Chair, that was the impetus for this amendment, and I hope that my colleagues can give it fair consideration on this amendment as proffered. Sidus Masi.
Sidus Masi, Vice Speaker. On the amendment, is there anyone who wishes to speak? Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I support this amendment because I'm just following the you statement you made before about kicking the can down the road. This puts 180 days. No more cans after 180 days. DOE, get your program right. You had 1 year, now you're going to get another extension. We need to put a stop to this. Because when they come in for the budget and they start saying, I need money to do this and this and this, and then the oversight chair, Mr. Chair, when you start saying, we keep giving you money, we keep giving you help, but you're not doing anything. This puts an end to the 180 days becomes the rule of thumb, and they got to put a plan. And then when you're conducting your oversight, they got to show the plan. They got to be able to show that there is work getting done, so we can move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Senator San Augustine. On the amendment, is there anybody else who wishes to speak on the amendment? Senator Fisher.
Yes, I just received, I think we all did, we received an additional amendment that is being offered by Speaker Terlahi. And when we look at Senator Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes' proposed amendment, the two cannot be read together. In other words, if Senator Muñoz Barnes' amendment passes, then Senator Terlahi's, if it passes, will revoke. Senator Tina Rose Muñoz Barnes they simply conflict, which is fine, but my suggestion would be that we move on to another amendment and revisit these two amendments together because they certainly can be harmonized. We've got a 180-day sunset with Senator Tina's, and we've got a inspection until complete under Senator Terlahi's. I would just suggest that we move on to a different amendment, return to this amendment after Senator Barnes and Senator Terlahi, if they wish, can consult one with the other to determine whether or not they can compromise on this. Thank you.
Speaker Terlahi.
Sidus Masi. On the amendment, I agree with the intent. We're trying to look for ways where DOE is going to very much specifically outline their corrective action plans, that they are concrete, they admit the deficiencies, and in this case, when the schools have failed inspection, they say these are going to be corrected within 180 days, and this is how we're going to do it. This is the progress we will make maybe every month so that public health can be ensuring that they do that. My only issue with this is that public health already said they would not agree to pass or to allow the operation of any school that had failed inspection. Even if they made all kinds of promises that they would have it fixed within a certain number of days, or even if they show that, like they have construction contracts going out for bid, or they have aircon contracts already in place. So we're just literally waiting for the aircons to be installed. They still would not budge on that. And they point to the safety of the kids, that your plan of how you're going to correct the deficiency doesn't necessarily make it safe for the kids today. I guess that's the difference. So for today and for the next 180 days, it's still not safe. Otherwise, I fully support the intent, which is very similar to the variance law that's currently in place, that if you want to exempt your school from a certain requirement, you need a variance. You need to cordon off certain areas and get a variance, like don't look at those, or they can still do that, and they can use that to pass an inspection. In other words, that will be deducted from your demerits, right? And so you can still pass an inspection with those types of plans using a variance. Using this corrective action plan, you cannot pass your inspection. You will have failed inspection. They will be opening it, notwithstanding a failed inspection and notwithstanding that for the next 180 days, it's still not safe. Whereas with the variance, you have to make it safe. On day one, you get that variance. In other words, instead of an air con, you're going to put in a cooler or a chiller or some other machine like these blowers. And that's their mitigation. They have to show that on day one so that it's safe for the kids on day one. And so that, I mean, I know this was also something that was, suggested to us by former Speaker Wampat, that we come up with a whole other process that admits that DOE is working on these things. And I commend DOE for all the progress that it is making, and they're so enthusiastic about all the progress that will be made in the next 365 days. But before that progress is made, neither of them actually would budge on a failed inspection school, and that should be allowed to open. And so for that, I think there's a distinction there. And that's the only reason why I wouldn't support adding this additional procedure into place, because this procedure is built on a failed inspection, and it doesn't require them to make it safe today. It requires them to make it safe within 185 days, or 100 and, what does it say? Sorry, 180 days.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Anyone else wishes to speak on the amendment? Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I did get a chance to look at the self-inspections of the schools that, are above 40 demerits. And, it seems to me that a large portion of them can become compliant given enough time and to complete, to address those demerits. A lot of those demerits can be handled in-house, so by the school and administrator on site. And then maybe with a little help, some of these refurbishment contracts can also boost, can help with the decreasing the amount of demerits. So I think there is a process already in place in regards to the regulations. Also, again, the variance. The variance is, we heard that the testimony that if there is an alternate plan that could address the health hazard, that would help decrease the demerits. And so I think that, looking over at the inspections, the self-inspections, there may be just a handful of schools that really need this time of 180 days, but I think for the majority of them, they have the proper resources. And I don't necessarily believe that this particular amendment is needed, because there's already a process in place to address these demerits. Again, we're talking about, like doors and air conditions, and I know they were able to implement almost half of their workload or work order, and there's grass cutting also and other things that can help decrease the demerits so that these schools can pass. Again, a lot of these are in the 40 range, which is pretty close to, passing. And I think it's just given a little bit more time and effort that they can continue to do to address many of these demerits. So, yeah, I have reservations about this amendment, although initially it sounded pretty feasible. But, you know, again, we're talking about enabling a school that's failed to continue to operate. And I think that's, again, opening up liability issues. So thank you.
Si dos Masi, Senator Paris. On the amendment, Senator Tydegui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues. Mr. Chair, this, I understand what the author of this amendment is trying to do, to allow a little bit of leeway to continue operating, but I think it made it clear by both DOE and by public health that they would not put children in harm's way. And when I asked the superintendent that question, would he open up a school if he found that the school was not safe for the students? And he said, absolutely not. He did talk, Mr. Chair, about, and maybe you can assist me on this, as I know you're sitting as a chair right now, but answer a question with regards to areas that are tapered off in sections of the school that are under construction or under repair. DOE has that, I guess, recourse to be able to do that and still operate in the school. Does public health take that in consideration when failing, or what is the process between the understanding between public health and DOE when a school has an area that's already been taped off, that where students can't approach and stuff? Mr. Chair.
Just on a point of information.
Point of information,
Senator
yes, Mr. Or
Tydegui.
point of inquiry.
Yeah, so, for example, Ocean View Middle School, right when you enter the campus, there's a bunch of buildings that are condemned and cordoned off. So when public health conducts their inspections, they don't factor in any areas that are cordoned off or not in use by the school.
Okay, so there's already something in place for those really areas that are pretty dangerous into play, and it's not part of the inspection. But usually, if a school fails, it goes above, I believe, 41 merits. If they received higher than 41 merits, then it's considered, it fails. Is that correct, Mr. Chair? Okay, 41 merits. Anything above that is, I think, when it fails in that perspective, oh, you're trying to get a hold of Senator Duenas? Senator Duenas, Chairman's trying to get a hold of you. Okay. Okay. So what I was trying to say is that, Mr. Chair, is with this amendment, I don't see what the difference is, 10 days versus 100 days with 180 days. We're putting our children in danger regardless how many days. It's okay to be in danger for 180 days. Well, actually, that's quite a bit of time for any of our students to get hurt, let alone even our staff, our DOE staff. So I do understand adding some lenience, and DOE has that prerogative to do so. But unless DOE signs off saying that this is not, a danger to our students, and to request for an conditional use, then I have no problem with that. But DOE would have to sign off of it after failing of public health and take responsibility if they feel that public health was just a little bit too hard on passing these inspections on the school. Then where does it say here that DOE will sign off on that and claiming that it's not? Give them the responsibility to do that, but it doesn't have it here. So yeah, whether it's 10 days, 1 day, 120 days, it's okay to put our children in danger. That doesn't make sense at all. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tadigui. Anyone on the amendment? Senator Barnett, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the issue, at least that I have with the first two amendments we're discussing here, is that they're operating under the premise that there's a willingness on the part of the superintendent of the Guam Department of Education to continue operating public schools that have failed public health inspection. And that is simply not the case. The superintendent stated many times on the record, not just in here during Committee of the Whole during this emergency session, but also in many oversight hearings across the hall, that if a public school fails public health inspection, then the simple truth, despite our best intentions or any way we arrange words together in an amendment, that school will be shut down, and there will be double sessions, alternating school schedules, and that's simply because the superintendent has repeatedly said, actually since a year ago, that he will not accept the liability of operating a public school that has failed public health inspection. That being said, I think the other issue with the first couple amendments that we're discussing here is that they're also operating under the premise that the Department of Public Health and Social Services is somehow willing to sign off on schools that have failed inspection to allow them to continue to operate. And again, as the acting director said yesterday, as Ms. Francine said during the Committee of the Whole as well, is that that is simply not the case, and that public health will not approve continued operation of any school that has failed public health inspection. So I know when we discussed this measure, there was a lot of talk from the members that they were trying to stave off double sessions or alternating school schedules or any other type of other learning module that's going to have to go into effect in the event that a school is shut down due to the failure of a public health inspection. And again, if the Department of Public Health is not willing to continue operating schools that have failed inspection, in fact, I think the acting director is very clear that this runs counter to their mandates as a regulatory agency. I mean, this makes sense, right? They're a regulatory agency regulating safety and sanitation, so why would they authorize you to continue operating when you're not meeting that standard? So for those reasons, and another one I'm about to mention, I don't necessarily support the amendment. Also because we discussed this issue of conditional permits at length, I believe, in an emergency session here a year ago, and public health does not do conditional permits. It's nowhere in their statute. There's no process for them to do conditional permit at all. Again, because if we're reading what this conditional use permit does, it runs contradictory to the mandates, the very sacred mandates that DPHSS is charged with executing to protect our people and our most vulnerable from all the safety and sanitation risks that come with not complying with the rules and regulations that public health is in charge of regulating. And so, yeah, I was just texting with public health. They don't do conditional use permits, and if they don't want to continue operating schools that have failed inspection, and they don't do conditional use permits, then I'm not sure what we're doing here. Continuing to entertain this false notion that if a school is shut down due to a failed inspection, we could put a bunch of words together and somehow miraculously wave away the superintendent and the public health department's unwillingness to just keep moving forward with a school that's failed inspection. Public health does, however, issue, the only other type of permit that they issue outside of the regular sanitary permit is a temporary use permit, and that temporary use permit is used for events like the Mango Festival or the Coconut Festival or a concert or whatnot. So I think I've laid out the reasons, and I think they make sense as to why I'm not going to support the amendment. And that's it, Pensit. So, Sujus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Sujus Masi, Senator Barnett. On the amendment, anyone else wish to speak? So seeing no one to speak on the amendment, the author may close. Vice Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Sujus Masi, Mr. Chair, and again, Mr. Chair, my intention here was to offer a compromise to our stakeholders, but just a few closing clarifications, Mr. Chair, and I want to respect a comment that was said earlier by my very good friend from God's country that I, respectfully disagree with this assessment of this amendment and a forthcoming amendment from, I guess if the speaker still proffers it. My amendment provides for a maximum of 180-day window for Guam DOE to operate a school that has failed an inspection and use that window to correct violations that were found. The forthcoming amendment, as I read it, says the schools can only operate after a request for an inspection and that they can operate while awaiting that requested inspection. Mr. Chair, I want to also clarify that DPHSS can set a maximum of 180 days for this conditional use, but the department can certainly set a shorter time frame for violations that are easily corrected, like paint and minor repairs. I know that when the DOE spoke and the question was asked out of the 18 schools to be inspected, how many schools needing the more than 3 months to complete or will not make the timeline, they went, instead of saying 10 to 11 schools, they said 5. So the intent of this amendment, Mr. Chair, is just to offer DOE another tool to keep these schools open while ensuring any deficiencies can be addressed. So yes, both the superintendent and public health testified that they would not allow an unsafe school to operate that, and they reiterated that. That's why I'm confident that if we give these two agencies these additional solutions through this amendment, they will not abuse it. They will not invoke this clause for school that is dangerous, that puts kids and employees at a real risk. So I just want you to know that maybe like another tool in this bill and in the existing law, maybe it never gets used, but at least if it's needed, it's there for them to use. And as I said, Mr. Chair, and as I look at the presentation that was done for us by DOE and Public Health, again, I look at this with an intention to offer a compromise to all the stakeholders, right? And that there will be an official report that will detail how and why each of these schools are in the health violations, and to establish that time frame for whatever's uncovered, for them to work on it. So, Mr. Chair, I'm literally just asking our colleagues here to look at this amendment, because I believe in my heart that this is a way to make sure that even those that are listening in and may have issues of concern regarding the violations that are still out there. I want to also bring up, Mr. Chair, that earlier DOE and the players that were here spoke about there were some things that weren't done by the previous leadership. And that when they came in, because you know that a lot of them are new, Mr. Chair, that they were working on it proactively. So you cannot take what has been done wrong in the past and continue to blame the players that are coming in to help fix. And as I listened and even talked to one of our former colleagues, the speaker, who said every week, every single week, former Speaker Judith Wampat goes to the meeting and looks at the updates and listens to what's going on. So for me, Mr. Chair, we look at ways that we can make it work for all the stakeholders. I'm really hoping that with this proposed amendment and the offer for compromise, to see that we make sure that we have our I's dotted, our T's crossed, and we also make sure that if there is a report of any, whether it be rodent infestation, whether it be sewage backup and all that, and it's unsafe for our students and our teachers and our staff to go in, then these agencies, because they're like the regulatory agencies, going to close the school down. And for me, I don't think there's a problem with asking for a detailed breakdown. We ask for report cards all the time. We ask for reporting requirements all the time. And in this case, I'm asking for a compromise. You're going to ask for something, make sure you have your valid reasons on why it needs to be done. So, Mr. Chair, I ask my colleagues to support this measure, and I didn't think it was going to be met with this much concern of opposition or all that, and I just feel in my heart that this was one way to make sure that we as policymakers, if we have to give them that authorization, that we have a plan that's in place, and that every accountable thing that needs to happen is going to be there. So I really hope my colleagues support this amendment, Mr. Chair, and I really thank you for giving me the opportunity. I know I still have more than 3 minutes to talk, but I'm hoping that my colleagues will at least support this effort. Sijus Masi.
Sijus Masi, Vice Speaker. So on the amendment, is there any objection? There is an objection. So all in favor of the amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Amendment passes. Is there any other amendments at this time? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Chair. As I was saying yesterday, I think one of the issues with schools that are still awaiting or have been awaiting public health inspection since school year 2023, 2024 is that these schools, it looks like if this bill passes, they could go another year without any type of engagement from public health. And according to the Guam Department of Education self-inspection reports, 14 of these 18 schools, again, would fail public health inspection according to the self-inspection reports that are listed on the Guam Department of Education website. As we learned in the Committee of the Whole, public health has trained GDOE to basically be, health inspectors, and they go out to the schools and they know exactly what public health's looking at, and they do their self-inspection, principals and everybody signs off on it, and these self-inspections, I think, are a good snapshot of the condition of these schools. And just right off the bat, with 14 out of 18 failing GDOE self-inspection, I think it's very concerning to be on this track where we're now looking at opening schools without public health inspection. And again, it could be months before public health even gets eyes on these schools. And so just going through the self-inspection reports And I'll start with GW again. Ant roach and or rodent droppings, evidence infestation throughout the campus. Floor tiles cracking in some areas throughout campus. And why I say that is because GW last year had to cordon off 2 classrooms because of asbestos risks. The tiling in these 2 classrooms had cracked open, and Guam EPA had been on the scene, and they had determined that the classrooms needed to be encapsulated because of the risk of exposure to asbestos for students and staff working at George Washington High School. Indoor temperature and humidity inadequate. Most classrooms have only 1 AC working. Classroom sinks not working and are unable to properly drain. Multiple sinks in restrooms not working or removed due to damage. Over at PC Lujan, holes in the walls, discolored walls, built-in shelves, termite infested, exposed electrical in classroom storage. Floor not tiled. Under plumbing, missing backflow valve. All restroom door stalls do not meet the height requirement. Holes in the walls, repair of non-working toilets and urinals continues to be an issue. And they failed their self-inspection. Vicente Beneventi Middle School, inadequate hand washing station, pending replacement behind library. Hand washing stations not adequately cleaned and maintained. Restroom sinks damaged, P-trap damage, pipes exposed. In Alahan Middle School, AC is not working, main office, principal office, AO office, boys locker room, counseling rooms, as well as classes 2, 7, 8, 10, 17, 18, 20, 21, 25, 27. JQ San Miguel. Vectors such as roaches and ants in classrooms, offices, inoperable door closures, doorknobs and damaged doors throughout the school, damaged awning throughout campus, paint peeling in exterior building and classroom, 15 inoperable ACs throughout the campus, sinks sharing 1 drain, urinals and toilets slow to drain, sinks in the boys' restroom on D-wing share 1 pipe to the drain. Jose Rios, standing water in front of 8th grade back area in your hallways, breeding of mosquitoes, beehives on certain areas in campus, infestation of rodents, ants and flies, rooms 1 and 2, room 12. Ukadu High School, scheduled vector control in June of 2023, however, sightings of roaches, ants, and rats still found on premises. And again, these self-inspections were not conducted last year. They were conducted this year. In fact, they were conducted this month. And so my amendment to me really speaks to the need to disclose to our school communities, whether it's the students, the parents, the staff, the conditions that exist in these public schools that are awaiting inspection. And so my amendment, which is to line 23, page 2, inserts a new section, site inspections for campuses that are awaiting inspection. Any school that is awaiting inspection according to Section 2 of this Act is subject to an on-site inspection by an ad hoc task force comprised of the following to review any progress made since the self-inspection reports and safety inspections were filed with GDOE, or if any additional health and safety issues are discovered. Now, this walkthrough inspection task force would consist of the superintendent of education, 2 members of the Guam Education Board to be appointed by the chair of the Guam Education Board, a school employee who is a member of the exclusive bargaining unit as provided for in Chapter 10 for GCA for GDOE, appointed by the school principal, an employee of the Department of Public Health and Social Services from the division responsible for enforcement of environmental health regulations who is appointed by the director, the principal of the school, and the Guam Department of Education Safety Liaison and Facilities Maintenance Manager. The school shall notify all students, parents of students, school employees, and the news media of the dates and times of the on-site inspections, and in writing by electronic mail or message, a physical copy if the recipient does not have email. Additionally, any self-inspections or safety inspection of schools shall be posted on the school's website and GDOE's website within 2 days after completion. The members of the task force shall report to the superintendent any recommendations on what is necessary to prepare the schools for upcoming inspections, including possible variances that may be required to make the school safe for in-classroom instruction. The report shall be published on the schools and the GDOE's websites. For schools with expired sanitary permits, these inspections are required to be completed and posted prior to the opening of schools for in-classroom instruction. And so it's my intention with this amendment to force the people who are ultimately going to be held accountable for the conditions in the schools to go and walk the schools and to assess any progress that was made after the issuance and the conducting of these self-inspections. And then they are to disclose to the school community the findings, any recommendations, and send them out to the parents so the parents have, full knowledge, they're making informed decisions, and most of all, it really forces that transparency and accountability where, quite frankly, there is very little to none right now. So, and I'd be willing to join these walkthrough inspections, and I hope my colleagues would too. And I think it's a good, sound amendment that really, it's not a public health inspection, but again, as I've shared with you guys, the content of these self-inspections at these schools awaiting inspection, it's very alarming to me. We're talking about rodent infestation and other violations of public health rules and regulations. And so I think that this is a good way to get these officials out of the aircon and out into the schools and to see firsthand the conditions that our students are going to be going to school in. And so I ask for my colleagues' support of this amendment. Sitos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Sitos Masi. On the Barnett amendment, I saw Senator Titigui's hand up first, and then I'll go to Senator San Agustin after that. Senator Titigui, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. Mr. Chair, I stand in full support of this amendment. However, I would like to be able to add an amendment to this amendment. And, this morning we had a public hearing, and we saw the Hurrah Academy along with their children and their biggest supporters, their parents that were there. Great success becomes great success to our children. A lot has to do with their parents being involved, and many of them are, Mr. Chair. I think most of us have received quite a few emails concerned about their children's welfare at these schools, and today I just received another one. To please, Senator Tidy, we do not allow our children to go into these schools that are not safe for our children. So, Mr. Chair, my amendment is very simple. It adds a number 7, and that section would read, my amendment to the amendment would read, a member of the PTO, if available. If available. And Mr. Chair, I can tell you, there are quite a bit of very active PTOs in our public school system, very active. And getting them involved is another link toward notifying their parents, especially when it comes to parent-teacher conference, not parent-teacher conference, PTO meetings where parents come to find out what's going on with their school. So having someone from that PTO would be very viable for information. So I would have to get the amendment printed up, Mr. Chair, but in the meantime, I'm sure my other colleagues have something, other things to say. But that's my amendment to the amendment. If you want to take a pause or continue the conversation, I'll be asking legal to assist me in creating that amendment.
Sitos Masi, Senator Titigui, I think I'll put it to the body. Seems like a pretty straightforward one while it's being worked on. Is there any objection to proceeding while the amendment's prepared in writing? Senator Snox.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to comment about I'm kind of reserved on the word if available. And the reason why is because every school has a PTO, you know, there's the president, there's vice president, there's treasurer, secretary, and more than likely, most of them are employees of the school. So maybe not the word if available, but they must be there. Because, Dale, you're going to be the PTO and you're not participating in the school? You need to participate. And I'm a strong believer that if a member is asking the PTO that says, yes, I want to see what my kids are going through. I want to see what I can do. That's the only reservation I got, the word if available. No, they must participate. Don't say you're a PTO, but you're not participating. That's reserved that one.
Mr. Chair, if I
Senator
may-
Tataguy, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem with that as well, taking away if available. I just figured that a lot of these PTO presidents and secretaries and vice presidents have a, 8-to-5 job, and they have to work, and they would have to take off. But I think if they dedicated themselves as an officer of the PTO, I'm pretty sure they'll show up to these things. So I'll adjust my amendment as I work with council just to put a member of the PTO.
Okay. So just so the body is aware, we're not allowed to go with the third amendment, but Senator Tataguy is going to adjust her language. So we're speaking now on the amendment as Senator Tataguy will be adjusting the language and removing if available. That's correct, right?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, I'll just, my amendment will be a Section 7 to include a Section 7, a member of the PTO.
Okay. So is there any objection to proceeding while Senator Tataguy prepares this amendment? Okay, no. So at this time, I will recognize Senator Joseph Augustine. Please proceed.
And Mr. Chair, this is in reference to the amendment in total, okay?
That's correct, and Senator Tataguy
All right.
is amending the language as per your request.
Okay. The only thing I'm concerned about, and maybe the author can assist me in this one, trying to find a way where we mandate that this ad hoc task force do participate. I mean, what would be the worst thing to happen? You got 1 to 7 members, and only 3 or 4 shows up. That's nappable. You know what I mean? You know the superintendent's going to participate, or he's the appointee or designee. Maybe something like that. 2 members of the Guam Education Board. I'm full support of that. I was on the board, and every board member should be participating in what's going on in their school, especially if it happens to be in their region. And then the rest of that, I'm just concerned about how do we mandate that they do participate, that all 7 show up? Because I just hate, it's a great ad hoc committee, but if they don't all show up, is it still a valid committee? I'm just trying to weigh which way do we go, because you have exclusive bargaining unit in every school. They have one. Employee of public health, that should be an easy. The principal of the school should always be there, or vice. The liaison facility manager should participate. He was here yesterday. I'm just wanting to figure out how we can make sure that they do come together. All right, Mr. Chair, and maybe the author can help out on that, on how we can, or I'll work with my staff and come up with some verbiage if need be.
Okay, Senator Augustine, at this time we are addressing Senator Tatagui's amendment.
I'm good with that first. I thought it was the whole sheet.
Okay, so you're back
Okay.
to the main amendment. Why don't we go ahead and dispose of Senator Tatagui's amendment and the discussion on the floor on the amendment to the amendment, and then we'll come back to you on the main motion.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I did see Senator Fisher's hand up as a request to speak.
Yep,
You're recognized at this time, Senator Fisher.
Thank you very much. I was confused as well. I thought we were on the main amendment. I thought that Senator Tatagui's amendment was proceeding without objection. So I have nothing to add on Senator Tatagui's amendment, but I would like to speak on the main amendment.
Okay, so what we're doing is we're proceeding on Senator Tatagui's amendment as it's being prepared. So we'll dispose of that first, and then we'll go back to the main amendment. Okay, so is there anything else on Senator Tatagui's? Speaker Talai, you are recognized on
Just Masi,
the
Mr.
amendments.
Chair. I'm in full support of the amendment that would add the PTO to this task force that's going to make an inspection of the school using the self-inspection reports. That means prior to the actual official public health inspection, while we're in this bill allowing the schools to open prior to those inspections by public health, that we're going to actually have a PTO member walk the schools with the maintenance team, with the principal, with the part of the union, and that these parents get to see for themselves whether we are really talking about chipped paint, chipped corners of a desk, or we're talking about rodent infestations, rat infestations, cockroaches, unusable bathrooms, and the other things that are actually in these self-inspection reports. Because they're not being inspected because there's one thing wrong with them. It's because there are 41 or more demerits. And if you look at their self-inspection report, there's always more than one item. They never got 41 demerits because of one thing wrong, 41 issues of paint. Never. It's always, and they almost all include something regarding what they use is vector, which we've been told means rodents and cockroaches and rats and those things, which we would never allow a restaurant an exception to open up if they had some kind of violation like that. We would not want that. I don't know why we would want that for our schools, so I love this amendment that adds the PTO. Because if there's anybody who should see and not be, confused as to what exactly is going wrong in the school, it's the PTO. They should be the number one on this list. They should be the one invited to see and hear firsthand from all these other people listed here what is wrong with the school for real, and why they got 41 or more demerits, and why they are not calling public health to inspect this school, and why we are allowing this school to continue to operate without it meeting an inspection, without it having a sanitary permit, really. So yes, I love the amendment. I fully support it. I think it really is, for me, would be the PTO alone would carry this whole thing for me. PTO. Situs Masi.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker. At this time, we're continuing on the tie-degree amendment to the amendment. Senator Barnett, then we'll go to Minority Leader Frank Blas Jr.
Situs Masi, Mr. Chair. I too rise in support of the amendment to the amendment, and I thank Senator Tidegui for offering it. When you go out to the schools, when you participate in the school cleanups, as we had helped out at Agata Johnston as they were preparing for their public health inspection back in May. They gave me a water blaster and stuck me on the roof of the temporary classroom. But who was really there to do a lot of the work and who really had a great understanding of everything throughout the school campus was the PTO members. And I think if you go school to school, Antala Middle School is another great school that's got a great PTO. A lot of times these PTO members are aware of the challenges, the difficulties, the demerits facing a school before we are here in the legislature. And I've gotten so much information from different PTO members about problems at the schools, like, oh, we can't get white paint from DOE Central. So these PTO members for me are the best kind of school parents, as they're very involved in the processes and everything that goes on at their children's school. So I definitely think, and I agree with the retiring speaker, that the addition of the PTOs to this ad hoc task force really kicks it up a notch, if you will. So I rise in support of the amendment, and I thank the author for her input in addition to my amendment. Situs Masi.
Situs Masi, Senator Burnett. At this time, Minority Leader Senator Frank Blas Jr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I also rise in support of the amendment to the amendment. However, I'd like to be able to make some suggestions with regard to the placement of where this is going to be and how this member is going to be effective. First off, while we say a member of the PTO, I think we have to be very, very specific. The member of the PTO of the school that is going to be inspected. Because if you just put a member of the PTO, it basically leaves it wide open.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Senator,
Sure.
Minority Leader, stand by. Proceed, Senator Tidegui.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of information, when I went over to legal to try and put this together, our minority leader was right on the nail on this one, where the amendment is now revised a bit to indicate it's a PTO officer, not just a member, because there are many members of the PTO, so we want to make sure it boils down to the officers. So any officer of the PTO for that particular school.
Okay.
That's being, so it is incorporated. I think the, I knew he would catch that, so quickly went over to legal and to try to word it so it sounds correct, but those will be taken care of.
Okay, so Minority Leader, please proceed.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the clarity in that. Secondly, and it goes to the body and to the makeup of the task force based on the original amendment, where you have the superintendent, a member of the task force, that is going to report to the superintendent. So the guy, you know, the superintendent is going to make a report to himself, and then he's going to say, "Self, this is what we found." And I think that it's, you know, to provide again. I feel that this officer of the PTO of the school that's being inspected actually deserves and should be in place of the superintendent position within the task force. Okay, so I don't know how we're going to be able to, because this is an amendment to amendment to an amendment, but, you know, I can proffer that when we go back to the amendment in itself. That's why I appreciate the amendment to the amendment proffered by this gentlelady from Tamuning, because then it does, you know, provide a member to this body that, you know, when we want to talk about transparency and making sure that, you know, all parties involved and all stakeholders are involved in this the process, the inclusion of the officer of the PTO of that school. So, I will go off and hold off on my second recommendation until we talk about the main bodies, because we can probably replace that with the superintendent's participation in the ad hoc committee that's going to report to the superintendent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Minority Leader Rivas, and of course, we'll recognize you in the main motion to move forward with that. On the Taitagui Amendment at this time, Senator Brown, you're recognized. Okay, on the main. So we are still on the Senator Taitagui Amendment. Has anybody else wish to speak to the amendment who has not spoken yet? Okay, Senator Taitagui, I will recognize you. Could you read the amendment out in lieu of maybe printing it out? If the body's okay with that, it seems pretty straightforward. Can you read it as adjusted at this point in time while we have you close and call the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Will do. The amendment will be a new Section 7 on page 2, line 23, and it will read, "An officer of the parent-teacher organization, PTO, of the respective school." Very simple again. It'll be a new Section 7, or not Section 7, but it'll be number 7. An officer of the parent-teacher organization, in parentheses, PTO, of the respective school.
So is that going to be your closing as well, Senator Taitagui?
Oh, well, I think everyone who sees the importance of including parents, as we saw this morning, as I mentioned, just seeing the parents there supporting their children and wanting the best for them is the best inspector you could ever have, is a mother or father of of a child. So I thank everyone for their support on this amendment, and that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So on the Taitagui amendment to the amendment, is there any objection? Motion passes. We are now back on the main motion. I will recognize you, actually recognize Senator Fisher and then you, Senator Brown. Senator Fisher had asked earlier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I see that, okay. I didn't object to the, I didn't object to my friend Senator Taitagui's amendment because this law, this entire amendment is unenforceable. So no matter what we put in it, it's not going to make a difference. We could say you got to have an elephant on the committee. It won't make a difference. It's not enforceable. I would ask, I have a question for its author, and it's this, sir. Does he agree that because he has characterized this as an ad hoc committee, that it would only come into existence when a necessity, that's the definition of ad hoc, when a necessity exists? Would he agree to that?
Does the author yield to the question from Senator Fisher?
Thank you, Vice. I do yield to the question. Yeah, and the necessity is the need to get these schools, to conduct a walkthrough inspection of these schools prior to their opening. So for schools with expired sanitary permits, these inspections are required to be completed and posted prior to the opening of schools for in-classroom instruction. And so when this ad hoc committee completes that task, then the necessity, I think, will expire, because they will have done exactly what this section does, which says, hey, you got 18 schools that are awaiting public health inspection. Get out there, walk those schools, make the assessment versus the self-inspections that were conducted, inform the school community, put it on the website. Thank you very much.
Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you to the gentleman for his answer. Because it is ad hoc and not standing, who will call the committee together among the 7 parties?
Senator Burnett, do you yield to the question?
I sure will. Thank you. It says right there, the school shall notify all students, parents, school employees, and the news media of the dates and times of the on-site inspections in writing by email or physical copy. And so, yes, the notice will go out that the schools will be inspected. And I think the bottom line is, if we want to open these schools, we should get eyes on them. And if the superintendent wishes to have these schools that are awaiting inspection opened, then I'm pretty sure he'll be there when he's got to be there. I'm pretty sure the Guam Education Board will also show up. And I think with this amendment to this law, that I think that puts everything in there. And so, yes, the school will notify everybody of the dates and times of the inspections.
Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you, sir. I believe the gentleman misunderstood the question. The question is, among the members of the ad hoc committee that is formed for a necessity that arises, who among the 8 will determine that the necessity exists and call the committee together? It's simply a process question, sir.
Are you asking once again
Yes,
for the author?
I'm sorry, that is a question to the author.
Senator Burnett, will you yield to the question?
I sure will, Mr. Chair, and I thank the senator for the question. We all know school starts next week. So again, the amendment reads, for schools with expired sanitary permits, these inspections are required to be completed and posted prior to the opening of schools for in-classroom instruction. And so I'm not saying I would assume, but if we all know school opens next week, then the superintendent and the other members of the committee would go in and walk these schools and inspect them before the start of school, if that's what they wish to do.
Okay. Unless, of
Senator
course,
Fisher, you recognize.
yes, and I thank you for the answer. I mean, that is true, except for if they decide they don't want to do that. This section says that a school is subject to an on-site inspection. It's not mandatory. It says it's merely subject to. And the fact that it's merely subject to means that the people may or may not form the ad hoc committee to do or do not do their job. That's why I began by saying, sir, that I don't know that I really object to this, because it's unenforceable. It just doesn't mean anything. But let me move on to a different question, sir. I note that Part 3 says a school employee who is a member of the exclusive bargaining unit, as provided for in 4 GCA Chapter 10, is to be a member. I cannot find, and this is a question for the author, could you give me a more precise citation for GCA Chapter 10 what? I simply can't find, and I've looked, I can't find the exclusive bargaining unit in the statute.
Does the Senator yield? Senator Barnett?
Mr. Chair, I will yield to the question, but ask for a moment's recess to consult with legal.
We're in recess.
Mr. Chair, I would object. Oh, okay.
We are in
We're back
recess
in?
for the,
Okay.
for the,
Yes, I'm raising a point of order. Legal counsel has a,
yeah, we're in recess. We'll
can I
come back
make the
to you when
point
we
of
come back
order?
from recess. We're back on the main amendment. When we took a recess, Senator Barnett was yielding to Senator Fisher's question. Senator Barnett, please proceed.
Mr. Chair. So Chapter 10.4 GCA, the whole thing deals with how we form unions, and this includes the police union, the education union, but it's my intent to amend this language that the senator finds offensive, which I'll do when we get back into the main motion on the amendment, sir.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Fisher, you recognize.
Thank you very much, and I thank the gentleman for his answer as well. Just to be clear on this, I don't find the language offensive. I just find the language incorrect and lazy. You have to check your citations. There is no such thing as an exclusive bargaining unit. There is no such thing. What he meant to say was special bargaining unit, which is found at 4 GCA 10.118. Had he looked at that section, though, he clearly would have noticed that that section sunsetted. So this particular section, and I'm glad to hear, I suspect he's going to strike it, but I'm glad to hear that he is taking that out because it simply doesn't exist. And, well, I mean, enough said on that point. All right, we know there's no exclusive bargaining unit, and it looks like he's going to strike that out, maybe. When we go to the last paragraph, Mr. Chair, it says that the school shall notify all students, parents of students, school employees, news media, everything, in writing by electronic mail. So you got to do it in writing. It's got to be by electronic mail. And if you don't have an email address, you're going to either get a telegram or a letter announcing that this is going to be happening. When we talk about the parents of the students, we're talking generally two. So that's 2 notices going out plus 1 to the student. That's 3 notices to 1 student, a family of a student. I would ask my friend whether or not he considers this to be burdensome to the Department of Education as well as the administrators of the schools. Or, well, it could be burdensome to them, but I suppose the better question would be, would this not, well, I guess it is the school that's going to do the notification once they figure out whether or not there's going to be an ad hoc committee meeting. Does he consider this unnecessarily burdensome when we could simply post it publicly on a school's website?
Senator Barnett, do you yield this question?
I sure do, Mr. Vice. Do I consider it burdensome? No, I don't. Do I think that there's a couple words or tightening that we can do to this section? Sure, but the intent of it is, it's very simple. Anybody who works at a school, whether it's principal, teacher, I mean, I got kids at public school, D.O. Paris. They bring home notices all the time, notice for a field trip, notice for this, notice for testing. So this is something that the Guam Department of Education does all the time. I don't think it's burdensome. And like I said, I could strike through some of this. You know, the intent is that every student who attends a school is going to go home with a notice that says, hey, this is what we found in our inspection, or this is when we're going to conduct the inspection. Thank you, Vice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank the gentleman for that response. Well, I think I do agree with my friend that the amendment in many ways can use some tightening up. We could, for example, find the correct citations. We could change words that suggest action to words that are mandatory. We could actually require rules and regulations for these sessions because, you know, I was talking with a friend of mine here, Senator Blas, and he brought up, and I know he hadn't spoken on it, so I don't want to steal his thunder or anything, but there are no rules and regulations for this. What is it they're inspecting? He says inspection. Well, is there a checklist? What checklist? Is this different from a checklist That is this something that they will themselves put together? I mean, we're putting together an entire, through this, we're putting together an entire bureaucratic machine, yet we don't tell the machine how to work or who's going to be running it or whether or not it's gas or electric. It just seems unnecessary to bring something like this up. I think you can tell the way I feel about the bill, I think, from the tenor of the questions. And then I guess a last comment would be, sir, Mr. Chair, we continually hear about this analogy, you know, if a restaurant was getting all these demerits, we certainly wouldn't allow that to open up. And then we're going to allow the schools to open up. Well, I think the analogy is false. Restaurants are designed to serve consumables, a burrito, a steak, whatever. We want it to be clean. I don't think opening a book presents quite the same risk as ingesting E. coli from a poorly washed salad. I just think that analogy is false. It's inviting, it's easy, it's simple, but it's not true, and it tends to mislead. The whole point of all of this, and even my friend in the front there, Senator Barnett, even he said it, and he said it more than once, the whole point is to get the schools open. And, you know, we're all barking and stuff about, well, it's not sanitary. Well, my house is probably not very sanitary, but it's safe. The difference is clear. It's driven by common sense, and it's also driven by the need to educate children, our children, and it has to happen now. There are approximately, by my count, there are approximately 36,000 people on Guam watching us and what we are doing, because those 36,000 people, that is the 12,000 students that we are about to upend, and their parents, 24,000. That's 36,000. Do the math. That's 25% of the people on Guam. 25% of the people on Guam are watching whether or not we are going to allow the schools to open so their lives won't be thrown into chaos. They're watching, and they should be watching.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
State your point of information.
Yeah, it is not the Guam Legislature that is not allowing the schools to open, and it's not the Guam Legislature that's going to allow the schools to open.
Point of order.
I would let her.
No, point of order supersedes it.
The sanitary rules and regulations and the laws that require a sanitary permit that are preventing the schools from opening because the schools have not complied.
Senator Fisher, please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. The speaker is out of order. If we look at the standing rules, points of inquiry, a point of inquiry is a request for information from you, sir. It's a request to you. It's not a time for speechifying. It's not a time for revisiting arguments that we've already made before. I don't mind, of course, if somebody raises a point of inquiry, go ahead, but the question goes to you, and it's not a time for a speech. A point of order is an observation that the rules are not being obeyed, not a time for speechifying. I like following the rules, and we've knocked heads in here several times about that. But I'm not real sure.
Senator Fisher, please wrap
Point
up.
of order,
I'm out of time.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Fisher. At this time, I will recognize Senator Brown. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate all the discussion that's come forth with regards to this amendment that has been put forth, and I do support it. I think that until we ultimately get things on track with regards to the operations in these schools and making sure that they're safe for our children to be in, I think every step we can take to engage all the key parties to put these issues, shall we say, on the front burner so that there's a collective review of what's going on, and hopefully, as a result of that, there will be more focus and attention and resources put into place so that whatever the inadequacies that may occur as a result of these inspections, that they can be prioritized. And all those that have a key investment in that school operating can ensure that these issues are addressed. And the first way to do that is making sure that they're aware of them. I think a lot of these issues have been left to lag all these years because not as much attention has been focused. It may be from the DOE operations itself, it may be from the lack of resources. There's a whole host of things we've heard as to why these corrections have not been made, including the fact they'll come back and say we've not had the money or the appropriation to address it. But some of these issues certainly could have been addressed, and they've not been. We also know as a result of the history, and certainly it coming to light, and I certainly appreciate the efforts of our education chair, Senator Barnett. When this whole issue came to light and the surprise, I certainly was surprised to hear that with regards to these inspections by public health, that these permits were being issued and there were no inspections occurring. And I think that's concerning to all of us because, I mean, we have thousands of children in the school system there every day going to school, they're eating, their day is consumed in the school, only to find out that these type of health inspections were not occurring. And that to me is a concern. I think we're all concerned about that. We all want to ensure that our children are in safe environments where they can learn because that's the priority. So I think until things get to a point where we're not literally having to hold the hand of the Department of Education, and they automatically know what they need to do to address these issues as they come up instead of letting it wait and wait and wait. And then we end up finding out that not only have these inspections they were not taking place, but then these corrective actions obviously were not prioritized. And anything we can do at this point to literally put the pressure on, keep the pressure on, until we're at a level where we have some comfort that these schools are meeting the requirements, that public health is doing the regular inspections, and that DOE is on top of the maintenance issues and the operational issues of the school, then I think this effort being put forth is a good thing so that we can help facilitate a safer environment for our children. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this amendment. Thank you.
Senator Brown. Senator San Augustine, you were recognized to go on the main motion, then I'll go to Senator Lujan. We are now on the main amendment, and
Okay. Mr. Chair, I think I have an amendment to the amendment. An amendment to the amendment as amended. Is that allowed? One amendment?
I believe we would be on the third amendment. Then I don't think that's going to be in order.
It's the third amendment to the amendment? Because this is an amendment, and then Senator Taylor did an amendment, and I'm just adding an amendment to that. What I'm basically trying to do, Mr. Chair, is to make sure that the superintendent or his designee, maybe the deputy superintendent, and so forth, and moving down the line, and making it a quorum that they must have a quorum so the ad hoc committee does exist. Because right now, if you don't get all, and when you really look at this on number 6, when it says GDOE, safety liaison, and that's 2 people. So the 7 is already 8, it's almost 9 people. So I'm requiring that at least 5 of the members must be present to consist of the committee. Otherwise, if you don't get all 8 or 9 people there, nothing's ever going to happen.
So at this time, I'm going to inquire with legal, but I think you'll be adding on your own amendment, which would be probably a section 8. So we're going to be in recess for a moment.
Okay, thank you.
recess. Just to be clear, what we're on now, Senator San Augustine has proffered an amendment. It's in the drive. This amendment is B317JSSA L23 P2COTW. So, Senator San Augustine, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, in support of the amendment, there's some things that are kind of missing there. And I identified that the first part on the amendment, it will identify like the superintendent of education or a designated deputy superintendent must be present. And we go down the line. I know there was comments about number 3, but until it's moved to strike that group, then it'll stay there. The next one, it goes down to the principal or assistant principal of the school. Because if the principal happen to be absent for whatever reason, we need somebody to fill that. The next one is the number 6, the GDOE safety liaison or designee. And the reason why, because that liaison officer, safety liaison individual, and the facilities maintenance manager are 2 separate individuals. So they got to be able to identify them. And with that, on the back side, you'll find that we want to make sure the task force is able to do a job. If you got 8 folks that need to be present, if you can't get 08, at least have quorum, and the quorum I'm asking for is at least 5 or more. So we meet that, and then they can do their job. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I hope my colleagues will support this amendment to the amendment as amended.
On the amendment to the amendment as amended, any member would like to speak? Speaker Taw, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair. Again, this is another very good amendment because of the intent of this overall amendment to allow these designees to go in place of a principal or a superintendent, I think will suffice because the sponsor of the amendment has placed this to be very upper level designees, not anybody, but it has to be a deputy superintendent to represent the superintendent or the assistant principal to represent a principal. And again, these people are here, although they were already part of the self-inspection that happened. For example, happened last month or earlier in the summer, the self-inspections already occurred with these people. They are informed and or might have participated in the self-inspections. But they are going on this task force and on this inspection that is required prior to the opening of the schools so that they can inform the parents, the union, the employees, and show them exactly where those demerits on the self-inspection reports are, where they are, what they look like. So I feel like this is actually a very, it's going to help with the transparency if these people know their jobs, and it's going to help to inform particularly the parents who I think it's an excellent idea that they be informed prior to the opening of the school. Notwithstanding that the self-inspections have already been done, they were done during the summer, but before you come in on day 1, they are mandated to bring these people, escort them around their schools, and show them exactly what we're talking about and why, and that we're opening the schools despite these things. So I support this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Jesus Masi, Speaker Talahi. On the amendment to the amendment as amended, Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair. So on the amendment as amended to the amendment, I also I thank the author for his input into this amendment, and all the members really, as I think the author of the amendment is really understanding the intent of this. It's disclosure, it's awareness, it's transparency, it's accountability, it's getting all the people who are stakeholders in this to go out and to get eyes on these schools and to vet what they see prior to the school opening against what was discovered in these self-inspection reports. And then, you know, I also appreciate the amendment, although I didn't necessarily support anyone other than the superintendent, because the language of the bill and all the other bills that we've passed have really been very clear on placing the authority to operate schools awaiting inspection, and the authority, which he said he wouldn't use, to continue operating schools that have failed on the superintendent. But given that, we're really focusing on 18 schools awaiting inspection, there's, 20 other schools that are going to be opening with valid sanitary permits. And so I think that this amendment, although I would love to see the superintendent, walk the schools, and I'm sure that he will do that with some of them, just recognizing a lot of the commitments that are happening with the opening of every other school. I think this allows the flexibility to have it be the superintendent or a designated deputy superintendent to conduct these walkthrough inspections. I also like the flexibility of including the assistant principal as we look out across the district. Sometimes principals handle facilities and maintenance issues at their respective schools, or sometimes there's a division of duty where you have an assistant principal who oversees that aspect of the campus. So I appreciate that. Also, obviously the GDOE safety liaison or designee, the facilities and maintenance manager, or designee. We heard yesterday from Mr. Pangilinan just how engaged, just how all over the place, not just the safety liaison and the managers are, but the entire facilities and maintenance division, which, this body, we passed a bill to help augment that by allowing them to bring back retired personnel. And so it's very encouraging to see as GDOE moves into this, this brave new world of a standard where, we're telling our kids, hey, you're going to that school got to be inspected, that school has to meet the safety and sanitation guidelines. And so I definitely support the amendment, and I appreciate the flexibility that it gives to this ad hoc task force, which again, the intent of this is to have all of these individuals go out and conduct these walkthrough inspections and then inform the school communities through the students, the staff and the teachers about the findings. So that way we have, parents making a really informed decision and having, all of the information at their hands. And I think it also goes a step further in providing that accountability at the school level, where parents will be able to avail of these walkthrough inspection reports and vet them against the self-inspection reports and hopefully see an improvement. And so again, I rise in support of this amendment to the amendment as amended. Si Jesús Masi, Mr. Chair.
Si Jesús Masi. Senator Fisher, on the amendment, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I've been reading the amendment again and again. I don't understand the suggestion that these inspections ad hoc or standing. I don't understand the suggestion that they must happen before a school can open. That's untrue. That's not in this amendment, and it's not in the bill. If their interpretation, although I don't suppose the interpretation is offered in accordance with the actual language of the bill, if their interpretation is correct, that means that we have gathered for 3 days for no purpose whatsoever, because it completely destroys, it eats Senator San Nicolas's attempt to get the schools open. I suspect that that is the intent of the lady and gentleman who seem to suggest that these must happen before schools open. That is untrue. Additionally,
point of information, Mr. Chair.
Point of information pursuant to the rules, or does he just want to chat?
Point of information,
You're
sir.
recognized on a point of information, Senator Barnes.
The amendment.
What's the point of information?
It's right there, sir. It says for schools with expired sanitary permits, these inspections are required to be completed and posted prior to the opening of schools for in-classroom instruction. So it's right there. It says, hey, if you want to open these schools, walk these schools. Tell the parents what you find.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I must have missed that language. Could you point that out to me, sir? To my friend up front. I'm looking at the amendment.
Senator Burnett, do you yield to your point of information in terms of the location of the language that you read?
Mr. Chair, so I believe, Senator, I do. So my amendment, which is in the drive,
I thought we
the
were
last sentence.
Point of information, are we addressing San Augustine's amendment or Barnett's?
No.
Senator Fisher, you asked me to receive a point of information from
Fair enough.
the mover. I am getting your information to you. I'm asking him to yield to that request so that he can locate that language that you've been asking for.
Okay, and sir, that would be within the San Augustine Amendment, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, point of information, just for clarification, so that the amendment I have proffered, I did not strike out on the original amendment, the part there after, on the back side of the original amendment of the author, a physical copy of the recipient does not have electronic mail, and so forth. If we all look at my amendment, I stopped right after number 8. If I'm correct, no, after number 7. And only added for quorum purposes. I did not strike anything out from the original amendment. You know, the part there that strikes out where it says, the school shall notify all students, parents, or students, school employees, and news of the dates and times of on-site inspection as it continues. I did not strike that out. Just want to make sure it's clear. And if I need to add it onto my amendment, then I'll add, so be it, so it's clear. Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct, Senator San Augustine. Senator Fisher, this is the amendment as amended to the amended language in the amendment, so please proceed. It is in order.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't suggesting it is out of order, but I am suggesting that that this recitation we heard is not suggested by the amendment itself. It calls for a new section. And so I stand on my original comments. The other thing I wanted to remark upon was, again, well, two things, actually. We're talking about the exclusive bargaining unit again. Sir, that just does not exist in Guam law. There is no such thing. There is an exclusive bargaining agent, but there is no exclusive bargaining unit. I believe what the intent was to say special bargaining unit, which is, in fact, included in the Guam Code. I don't know that that's going to move the can, figuratively, or the ball very far down the field. Because that unit sunsetted 1 year after its enactment. I think that might have been as far back as the 70s when we were thinking about collective bargaining units. With that said, sir, again, just like the Barnett Amendment, because this is it's unenforceable. There's no enactment to it. There's no rules and regs. I don't know what the inspection, nobody knows what the inspections are going to be. Nobody knows who's going to be head of the ad hoc committee. Nobody knows, except for Senator San Augustine at least had the foresight to say you got to have at least 5 people there to do the inspection. But I don't know who's going to make the phone calls to round those people up. Are they going to be compensated? Well, we're not thinking about that, I guess, at this point. But those are, you know, getting them compensated goes a long way towards dragging somebody in after work to perform these inspections. The point is, again, the point is to get the schools open and to get them open as safe institutions where our children can learn. That old saw, you know, why are we making perfect be the enemy of good? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Actually, on the amendment to the amendment, Senator Tadigui, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in full support of this amendment, and I thank the author to have that foresight to see that in the event someone is not available, especially during the school year as everyone's preparing to get ready for school, that this totally makes sense. And I don't understand why anybody would not think that, you know, what we're trying to do here in this whole amendment, the original amendment, and trying to make better certain parts of this amendment, which so far, you know, the amendments to the amendment is working out. But it sounds like some people here just trying to make it more difficult just because it just seems to be argumentative for some personal reason. Other than what we're trying to do here is to ensure that our children are safe and to provide these mechanisms, and most of all, to be transparent.
Point of order,
along
Mr.
with
Chair.
accountability.
Shouldn't make an inference of of what another senator is supposed to be doing or thinking or saying.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Senator,
What did he
the point
say?
of order is directed to the chair. I'm gonna rule that the comments stand. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, all we're trying to do for this main amendment is try to make it better, like I mentioned. Instead of trying to be argumentative on something that is very, so small and just ridiculous. I think, Mr. Chair, that energy best be spent to finding ways to making this amendment better rather than just being argumentative for the sake of personal reasons, as I mentioned. So, Mr. Chair, I stand in full support of this amendment, and if there's another amendment that comes up that gives comfort to our parents of these students and comfort to the staff of DOE who have to go there every day, to give comfort that when they walk in there, they're not going to get hurt, they're not going to get sick in any way, then we need to do that. Instead of nitpicking on things that do nothing but just being obstructionists. So I stand in full support and thank the good author of this amendment to have this foresight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susmasi, Senator Tadigui. On the amendment to the amendment as amended. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, seeing none. Any objection to the amendment? Or Senator Snogsteen, would you like to close on your amendment?
Not needed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there any objection to the amendment? No, amendment carries. We are now back on the main amendment, or actually, are you done? I think you might still have some time, Senator Snogsteen. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I'll recognize Senator Lujan. Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, you know, I stand in any amendment that would definitely help the schools to open and clean schools. And yes, we've had past couple days speaking to DOE, DPW, and public health. My thing is this. Is this another statute? The school's going to be opening next week. This is another statute that may not be able to be undertaken. I mean, because I think there was a couple of us here that served when the Adequate Education Act passed. And of course, point number 8 of the Adequate Education, a healthful, safe, sanitary learning environment. And so that was passed years ago. And here we are, 2024, school year 2024, 2025. We still are challenged, greatly challenged with such. This amendment or bill, again, I'll support it, but would it make a difference? Because we are already in violation of the Adequate Education Act. And almost on an annual basis, we are in violation of the Adequate Education Act. And so, yes, I'll support the amendment, I'll support the bill. But would it change because, again, it's next week? I'm not offering an amendment, but I'm saying, I think there was 14 schools that were greatly challenged. I think they said there was 19, but I mean, the greater challenged ones were, I think the number was 14. There's 15 of us. Maybe each one of us assign ourselves to one of those schools and help them get them open. Maybe that's the part of the solution. Because again, we can pass this and we can feel good that we did, but again, you know, a certain amendment, this is a bureaucracy that would they be able to get it in place in time for school opening next week? Now we're talking about a couple months, maybe so. It's next week. So again, on an annual basis, the Adequate Education Act is not adhered to, and we violate that, will this change it? Will this, again, solidify point 8 of the Adequate Education Act and really put it in place and get it going? And for me, when we spoke to the folks from DOE, Public Health, DPW, seems like they got it together. Seems like they got it together. I mean, they have a system in place. They're doing their safety checks themselves. You know, in an instance, they say they need this to open it, and then the other argument is, well, if they don't pass health inspection, I won't open it. So I'm kind of confused as to whether or not this bill is gonna mean anything if the superintendent had already told us that whether or not, I mean, if the health inspection, if they don't pass health inspection, he doesn't want to take that liability. It doesn't remove him. I don't hear or read anything here that removes him from liability. The adequate education puts liability on the superintendent. So what trumps what? So, I mean, again, we'll pass it. We may feel good about it, but then if the schools don't open, we're going to say, hey, but we gave you the tools. But then the superintendent will say, well, you know, still got this Adequate Education Act. There's nothing here states that you remove me from the liability because the Adequate Education Act says I'm still responsible. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, again, I'm in support, but I think rather than being here about this, there's 15 of us. Let's each assign ourselves to one of the 14 challenge schools, and let's get out there and help them open up and get them closer to opening up next week. Us sitting here doesn't get them any closer, in my opinion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Senator Lujan. On the amendment as amended, Burnett. Senator Blas, you recognize, and then we'll go to Senator San Nicolas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, Mr. Chair, I have to agree with the retiring speaker and some of the concerns that he brought up. Had we been arguing this bill 2 months ago, it would be a little bit more amenable to supporting this. I want to support it. However, let's just be honest with each other. Today's Thursday. School opens next week, Thursday. This amendment basically calls that for the 18 schools that we're talking about, before they can open up, you've got to go through this whole process. There was a remark earlier saying that, you know, it's not the legislature that is closing the schools, they're keeping the schools closed. Well, this amendment will keep the schools closed. Because let's just go through the process of what this bill is going to go through. You know, let's say we vote on it today. It goes to the governor's office tomorrow. She's got 10 days to deal with it. Let's say by the goodness of her heart, she passes it tomorrow. That's Friday. You're really going to give 3 days? Because it says, it's very clear, and as far as the amendment, that your schools will not be open. Expired permits, these inspections are required to be completed. You know, it's kind of interesting because then the way the amendment starts, it says, is subject to an on-site inspection, but now it's required. Which one is it? And if you're going to require it, and you're going to require it before the start of school on Thursday, just how realistic is that going to be? Again, had we been arguing this issue 2 months ago, giving them adequate time, because what are we going to say when we pass? Oh, we pass it, here's the tools. But we also handcuffed them. with the same tools. I'm going to go ahead and reserve my motion to remove the superintendent from the ad hoc committee, because you're going to have the superintendent right to himself. I'll make that argument when we get out of this amendment. But again,
Just, Minority Leader, we are on the main amendment.
I
as
know,
amended.
we're on the main amendment.
Yeah.
But then if this amendment passes, okay, then I can renew my motion.
You're speaking on the main amendment because the Senator San Augustine amendment already passed.
Already, I understand that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that if this main amendment does not pass, this does not exist, my motion is not necessary. My motion will not be necessary. Okay, so that said, that's a whole other argument. But the whole I want to stick to my main point in the argument in the committee, and the creation of the committee as a whole, and the purpose for it, because I have to, also agree with a previous comment that there's nothing in here that makes it enforceable, mandatory, because if it's subject, but it's required, who's on first and what's on second? Who's going to start this? The assumption here is going to be, you can assume a bunch of people that are members of this ad hoc committee are going to take the reins, but who is it? Who's going to be responsible for that? And if they don't do it, and who's going to be responsible for that? It's not here. It's not here. And I don't know. I mean, I guess the argument, and the deliberations on this amendment, will continue. But I liken it this way. I was going to save this remark for later on. This body was asked to come in and make Kadun Monok, and now we're making jambalaya. Again, I'm all for the transparency, and I'm all for making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's, but do we have too many I's and too many T's in this four-letter word? That's the concern that I have here. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Cesar Masi, Minority Leader. This time I'll recognize Senator San Nicolas and then Senator Perez. Senator San Nicolas, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the amendment. My first day of school, when I transferred from Customs to Southern High, my first day, they actually broke into my office. That was my first day. I kind of scratched my head. I was like, oh my gosh, did I make the right decision? I left Customs as a captain, and I went to DOE and as a brand new rookie counselor. But we fixed the office that day. It was horrible. They broke in the glass, they broke the door, spray painted the place, but we fixed it up, and education continued. And of course, it was around rainy season, so they transferred me to another class, to another office, and then it started to leak. And then I asked the principal, can I be moved? Guess what? They cordoned off the place. They sent me to another office, and education continued. And then I went to that place, and it was close to a restroom. And every time they opened up the door, the suction and everything filled my room with unpleasant scents. But I asked the principal again, sir, can you move me again? And guess what? Nobody went into that room, and they made it a storage, and they moved me to another place. But guess what? Education continued. I understand, and I really appreciate the dialogue that is happening here. But education, despite our challenges and our conditions sometimes, need to go on. And the reason why I brought those stories up was because not only they're true, but because they were done at the care of the principal of the school. The superintendent yesterday testified that the principals of these schools said that they're safe for kids. And you have to understand, a lot of these principals are college graduates, some of them masters, a lot of them now are doctors. And I trust them. You know, in a very litigious world that we're living in, I mean, anybody can bring up a lawsuit should anything happen. And, you know, I place my trust in these people, you know. I place my trust in the principals and the teachers. None of them would want anything bad happen to our kids. What I don't want to do, and this, we're running up against time, and we really need to open up those schools so education can continue. And I just feel that with this amendment, we're just adding more math to the equation. And although I applaud the honorable senator for this, but it's crunch time. And what are we going to mobilize? How many people to do this before the before school opens? And I can't see myself supporting this. I would like to support our principals and you know, allow them that discretion, and I take their word for it because I lived there. I lived this life that we're talking about, and I believe that they all have the best interests of the students at heart, and they would never place anybody in danger. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nicholas. On the amendment as amended, Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I just wanted to point out that Department of Education, they asked for a delayed enactment when these regulations were first being created. They wanted a delayed enactment. I believe it was stated 20 years potentially, but it ended up being 5 years. And so if we were to look at today, you know, they should have been compliant by this school year. And so, you know, thanks to Senator, the sponsor of this amendment, you know, and this body, we passed unanimously that we wanted to push up the implementation date by a year. And I think that was a good call because all the money that came in allowed for more time to react to help bring our schools up to compliance to these sanitation rules. Okay, I'm competing with some noise here. So what I'm seeing with this amendment is that, you know, considering a law was passed last year to give some leeway, some flexibility to allow schools to operate even though they did not pass inspection. What happened is we don't want to repeat that mistake where, you know, we're kicking the can down the road. Let's say, you know, next year we come across the same situation. And what I see the importance of this amendment is that it puts the feet to the fire. You know, we don't want to come back here and say, you know, we're going to allow, you know, conditional permits. We're going to allow you to operate without a safe school, an unsafe school. And I think our community is really, you know, they need to be heard that this is not acceptable. And as a teacher, I know that the conditions of the school matters. It matters in the learning environment. It's not divorced from learning. And so to sit here and say, you know, we need to put you in the schools no matter what, I think that there's a fallacy in that. You know, I've known colleagues of mine, you know, qualified educators become sick because of the mold. And so when we are turning a blind eye from allowing schools to open that are not safe, we are also affecting the academics, the learning environment. And so I just wanted to, you know, address that. So I really, you know, I do support this amendment because, you know, we want to continue to provide better policies. You know, we want our schools to be safe. But I think what this does is bring more of the community in, you know, to have more of an eye on what's wrong with our schools. I mean, you know, I wish this was, you know, included sooner. You know, in years past, I wish this was sooner. You know, maybe we could have averted, you know, the shutdown of Simon Sanchez because the community was involved. And what this amendment does, it helps to prevent that from happening, from these other schools to be in a situation where, you know, we have to overcome these more insurmountable challenges. So, you know, again, we know about what happens when we delay or defer maintenance. It just becomes more costly to address these concerns. And I think what this amendment does, it really nips it in the bud. You know, I see this as a collective effort. You know, this list of members of this task force, I see this as a collective effort, a diverse group of members from different parts, you know, from the education, from health, you know, from, you know, the parents, and from the, you know, GFT, for instance. I think those are good members to have in this group. And I think not only it's about helping to, you know, become proactive. I feel it's more of a proactive measure because you're helping not only the administrators, you know, identify the issues, but you're also bringing in people with knowledge who can help assist. You're bringing in more of a community to help address these issues. And I think that's what the value of this amendment does. You know, ad hoc is when it's not, and I think that's okay because an ad hoc task force is one that is brought together when it's not a traditional or ordinary response. And that's what we want to get to. We want to get to those points where this is not needed anymore, but at this time it is needed with the state of our schools. And I think this only helps, it only would help the situation to get more eyes on it and more support. I mean, that's one of the things that was lacking, is getting this more communal involvement. And I think this has the potential to do that. And this is what our principals need. I know there's a lot of things on their plate. They have to look at schedules, they have to look at busing, they have to look at, you know, coordinate all these things. And if we bring in more people in the community, this can only assist. So I see good coming from this. And so I rise in support of this amendment. Sujus Masi.
Sujus Masi, Senator Paris. On the amendment as amended, anyone else would like to speak that hasn't spoken already? Okay, so Speaker Chalahi, you're recognized.
Sujus Masi, I support the amendment. Again, the Guam Legislature is being asked today to pass a bill that would allow the superintendent, after an entire year of not having to follow the sanitary rules and regs, that they get another year to open schools and operate schools while they wait for inspections that public health has said they are ready and willing to do. But GDOE is not ready. So they're going to put that off, but they want to operate the schools. They want to open them up. They want to bring the kids in without a sanitary permit, without an inspection by public health. That's huge. And some people think that's nothing. I don't agree. The bill also asks us to allow schools to operate that have failed inspection, meaning it is very clear they cannot meet the sanitary requirements that previous legislatures have implemented, that public health, the governor, the attorney general, that everybody prior to the legislature agreed should be implemented, that everybody who testified in here in the last couple of days said should be implemented. They said we need those for the safety of the kids. And now, this amendment that's going to require that we are actually going to bring the parents in to the schools that have failed inspection, that are not inspected. We're going to bring the parents in and we're going to show them what we know to be the deficiencies. We're simply giving them notice before the students enter as to exactly what your child is going to face in that school. And I can think of nothing better when we're going to make these huge exceptions to law, to sanitary rules, than to allow the parents to know exactly what their student is going to face, so they also can make informed decisions. They can decide to petition us to close the school. They can petition superintendent to do something different. They can ask the governor to bring the resources of the entire government to help that school, like they've promised. It would just give these parents, so they don't read about it in the paper, or they don't have to hear their kids come home and say what they've said for decades, what they said before we didn't mandate the sanitary rules, what they said before they didn't mandate the sanitary inspections. They said, I can't use the bathroom at my school. Girls could not go to the bathroom in elementary, middle, and high schools. They could not wash their hands enough. They had rats. It just was last year. It wasn't that long ago, and I can't understand oh my goodness, now the legislature is impeding the safety of the students? Are you kidding me? The bill is going to allow these students to enter no matter what the violations are. And this amendment might just save us by mandating that the parents are going to be absolutely informed of what their students, what their children are going to see in that school, how they're going to live in that school, what the school has done for the last few months. Why couldn't we fix the toilet? They're going to be facing the superintendent, the principals, the maintenance managers, and hopefully get an explanation why that could not be repaired. And if you look at the list of things that need to be repaired, the maintenance manager has estimated for almost every school 4 weeks. That's all they need to repair everything. 4 weeks, except for those that are under construction. For those, they could get a variance and they could pass inspection. For the other stuff, they need 4 weeks to repair it. Or they need multiple teams to go in there to repair them all at the same time. But they seem to not be getting that type of support. So they're going to have to do them one by one. So I am so glad that this amendment is hopefully will be put in by my colleagues who want to open schools that, according to public health, are not safe. My colleagues think they're safe, but public health says they're not safe. The superintendent of education says if they inspected them today, they are not safe. They would not pass, and I would not open them. But let's close our eyes and not inspect them for a year, and I will open them. It's like a shell game. But at the very least, let's inform the parents. Give them a chance to use their voices, to use, I don't know. I'm really hoping that this is going to make sure that nothing is hidden. And that if the parents know, we are all going to know. And hopefully, those colleagues of mine who say, this is not a restaurant, we don't need to be worried about rats or cockroaches or broken bathrooms. They're not eating food in a school. Who says that? It's a very, very real thing. When the kids come home and tell the parents about the conditions, the parents go to the principals and say, why is this the condition? Well, this gives them advance notice. Yes, we're 3 days before opening. Is that our fault? Absolutely not. It's because the year that we gave them and the 20 million that we gave them, thanks to you, Mr. Chair, did not get to them. Could not work because it was delayed. The money was delayed. The contracts are only being issued out now. And my colleagues want to say the legislature impaired these schools from opening. It's the opposite. We've given them every variance possible, the possibility for variances. We've got public health up to, we are ready and willing to inspect every school. We've got the money available. We made it available at least a year ago, I think, Mr. Chair, that was what your law did. But only now, after so many delays, and continued, put my kids into a school that's not even sanitary. "41 or more demerits, and if you look at the list, the schedule of demerits, so many of them after inspection by the facilities maintenance officers of DOE. Some of these are 60, 70, 50s. They shouldn't open. They should be fixed. And I really actually am more optimistic that the more pressure we put on them, the more they will be fixed, as opposed to the opposite. It's the only reason they have been fixed. Plus, we have a new team of people going on here. Don't forget, this happened for a decade under previous superintendent, and that superintendent got glowing evaluations from the Board of Education, while the schools could not meet sanitary permit conditions, while the superintendent requested a 20-year extension on whether the sanitary permit rules had to apply to schools, and pretty much made no progress. So all the progress that has been made has been done in the last year or two by acting superintendents and by our current superintendent and his team. I love their enthusiasm, and they want a little more time to finish. They're going to do that because they've got their projects and their RFPs and their construction ready to go now. But I say, let's pass this amendment. Let's get these parents informed. Si Dios masi, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Masi, on the amendment as amended, anyone wish to speak who has not spoken yet? Seeing no individual that hasn't spoken yet, the main sponsor of the amendment, you may close.
Si Dios masi, Mr. Chair, I'd first like to start by amending the amendment. It's a very simple one.
Please proceed.
Stand by. So yeah, I'm just striking, I don't have the amendment as amended in front of me, but I would strike number 3, a school employee, I want to strike through who is a member of the exclusive bargaining unit as provided for in Chapter 10 for GCA for GDOE, and leave appointed by the school principal. So the amendment as amended and further amended will read a school employee appointed by the school principal.
It is in the drive, correct?
Is it in the drive? Yeah. A second, but that's it.
It is in the drive. I just want to make sure that the members are okay with us voting on your striking without it in writing.
And if I could also amend this is the back page after a physical copy, and I want to strike through if the recipient does not have an electronic mail or message account. And so it just read in writing by electronic mail or by physical copy.
Does the body understand the amendment, and are we okay proceeding, or shall I take a recess in order to be able to get this in writing? Senator Tadigui?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what was said on that last strikeout or inclusion.
I'm going to take a recess, and we'll get this in writing. We're in recess. At this time, we are back from recess. Senator Burnett, you are recognized.
Mr. Chair, we're just prepping the amendment. Oh. Thank you. Okay, so it's in the drive. And we're going to strike number 3, a school employee, and you can see the section struck there, who is a member of the exclusive bargaining unit as provided for in Chapter 10 for GCA for GDOE, and it'll continue to read appointed by the school principal. So that amended section will read a school employee appointed by the school principal. And then further down, after the numbers, number 6, the school shall notify all students, parents of students, school employees, the news media of the dates and times of the on-site inspections in writing by electronic mail message or by a physical copy, striking through if the recipient does not have an electronic mail or message account. So it just really simplifies that language. Mr. Chair.
On the amendment, is there anyone that wishes to speak on the amendment? Okay, you may close on the amendment. No objection. Amendment passes. You may continue to close on the motion. At this time, it looks like there is a consensus to continue this amendment discussion tomorrow, and we will currently then go into recess until 9 a.m. tomorrow. Masi.